to this issue, and it's one that's been of concern for some time now. The University of Fort Hare has now opened a case against those it's found responsible for a cyber smear campaign against current staff. 6 former employees and a member of the University Council have been identified. The case is a result of the cyber forensic investigation launched by the Vice-Chancellor following what he's described as a double-pronged shoot and smear campaign. Sakhela Buhlungu believes the aim is to intimidate and terrorize those fighting for accountability at Fort Hare. Let's find out more. I'm joined by the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Fort Hare, Sakhela Buhlungu. Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Talk to us about this cyber campaign, the people that you believe are responsible for the cyber campaign. Do you believe they are linked to those who attempted to assassinate you earlier this year?
Thank you very much, Sally. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, great. It's a very complex one, but at the same time, it's a straightforward one. The smear campaign is something that's been ongoing for the last 3-4 years. As a matter of fact, you could even say since I started working for Fort Hare in 2017. But it intensified in 2021 and 2022, especially towards the review of my five-year contract, as some people wanted to scupper that using the smears. But it did not stop. It did not stop. Now, there are two things that I've said about this, is that at the same time as the smears were happening, all kinds of scandalous things being said about myself, about some of my deputies, some of my managers, and more recently, actually, the late Mr. VC. As that was happening, the shootings were happening on the other side. So two-pronged strategy, yes, to intimidate, eventually, I suppose, to dislodge the Vice-Chancellor and those deemed to be working with him and supporting him in his work. So that's what's been happening. But perhaps I should also speak about another related phenomenon, related in the sense that we've also become aware and gotten evidence of information of another ex-employee who was still employed at the time, who tried to basically hack into our system, gave instruction to a subordinate to create a super user account in which, to use the term, I could then export mailboxes from the UFH system. So that's what we've been having there for. People kind of siphoning information from the system, using it for whatever purposes, to smear and scandalize people. But at the same time, more recently, this one where people kind of conference together, they get a version of a smear email, and then once they're done, they say read and delete, and then they send it to a target audience. More recently, the target audience has been members of council, the external members of council. And you can imagine, so the idea is basically to influence those members so that they can suspend the VC, get rid of the VC and some people. That's the gist of it.
And I know that you're naming names. Do you believe that the people behind the smear campaign are also linked to those who are literally carrying out assassinations at Fort Hare?
Let me put it this way. I will not name names at this point. But I do know for a fact, now that I know the names, now that I've seen the email addresses, I do know that some of those people are people of interest to law enforcement investigators. That's as much as I can say. People of interest, in other words, there would be people that would have to answer a couple of questions about the assassinations. But I cannot say definitively here, I'm not an investigator. I also don't want to kind of jeopardize what's going on out there.
Okay, I hear you completely. I have to ask you, Vice-Chancellor, how safe are you currently? Do you feel safe?
It's a relative question. I feel safe because there are people surrounding me. I have to be accompanied by someone, at least 2 people. But let me expand it, because it's not just about the Vice-Chancellor at this time. We have under a protection program about 22 senior people, myself included, 22 senior people. All of them are under a protection program with people accompanying us everywhere we go. So your question, do I feel safe? I feel as safe can be. I go to work every day. I go to meetings. I attend what I have to attend. I suppose there's nothing such as kind of perfect safety. But yes, one has concerns. I don't want to kind of leave that out. We all have concerns. We don't want to be shot. We don't want to die. Our job here is to run the university, teach, and do administration.
I mean, it's just astonishing to me that you are trying to do your job and you're trying to do a job of clean governance at the university, and your life and the threat of 22 senior staffers is at risk to the point that you actually have to have a security detail. This has received obviously a lot of attention over the recent months. I do understand as well that this issue was being escalated to the President Cyril Ramaphosa. Has he responded to this issue?
Let me put it this way. Yes, the president responded in several ways, and I want to put that on record. 2 days after the assassination of Mr. Hare VC, the president did call me. I did request the meeting from him. He said at the time that he would look at it, his staff would look at his diary. And I must say, just fast forward then to Wednesday last week around midday, we got a direct call from the presidency saying that the president had a slot for us the following day at 12:30, Thursday, 12:30. So we rushed, got the flights organized, and the president gave us about an hour and a half of his time last week, Thursday. And we're very grateful. We spent that time briefing the president in finer detail about the state of play in the university, especially when it comes to issues of corruption, of fraud, and all of that, but also, by extension, the security situation. The president showed a lot of interest and asked questions for his own information, and he did make the point that the pandemic, to use his term, the pandemic of criminality seems to be spreading into higher education because we're not the only one. So he then promised to ask the security cluster to look at Fort Hare and the rest other universities. But I should also add, Sally, that the other response by the president was that immediately the assassination happened, he dispatched 3 ministers and a deputy minister to come visit us, and we met with them. But most of the time during that visit, I spent with the Minister of Police, the National Commissioner of Police, the Deputy National Commissioner of Police, and a whole lot of other teams, briefing them again in minute detail, and which we found useful. I can say now, as a response of all of this, as a national task team has now been created to investigate directly all these issues at Fort Hare, and also, and I should add, to excavate all cases that we've been reporting since 2017 that had been sitting buried or quashed by whoever it was that tried to quash them.
Well, we wish you strength and safety, and thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. Really good news to hear that the President has now appointed a very specific team to look at security issues, because you're certainly fighting it on both fronts, a cyber war against you and members of your staff, but also very real safety concerns, 2 assassinations at the institution, the fleet manager, and then sadly earlier this year as well, the bodyguard of the Vice-Chancellor, and it is very clear that in fact the intended target was the Vice-Chancellor himself. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Sakhela Buhlungu, he is the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Fort Hare.